Hello guys, how have you been? I hope all of you are doing well. Today in the morning we were supposed to have a live session, but due to connectivity issues I couldn't come live. So I am posting the material as a recorded session. I know that we were supposed to discuss some more characters, Angie, Marlene and Joyce, but rather than us discussing that through a live, I'll probably give you a conclusion to the play and then do the rest of the discussions on those characters through your classmates later. Okay, so we have been discussing this play for a really long while actually. Initially we discussed about the nature of Caryl Churchill's works, and then we came to the specifically to the play Top Girls and the cultural atmosphere from which it was born. We also discussed how the political changes of the times actually deeply reflect in the play. While Caryl Churchill designs certain characters, designs certain choices of the characters, designs the way in which certain characters behave, designs the values of certain characters, it's actually the nature of the times which are reflected there. So the 1980s is actually a time when the feminist thought actually gains a lot of momentum. So we tend to discuss or we tend to think in that direction. Is it actually a feminist play, or does it respond to feminism in a different way? Actually, the choice is actually left to the viewer or the reader of the play. Even though there are many feminist elements in the play, there are points where the driving ideology of feminism gets deconstructed in the work of Caryl Churchill. While the entire notion of feminism as achieving material prosperity gets significantly questioned in the work of Caryl Churchill. While the characters like Marlene represent women folk attaining success, which actually should have been an image of successful womanhood in the 1980s, there are questions posed against that. Now the character of Joyce and the values that Joyce sticks on to, that are actually posing some questions against the understanding of the notion of female success or successful womanhood. Now, and then we also discussed how it actually discusses the class conflict also. While in the new political atmosphere, where discrimination against women was actually being ruled out through law itself, and equal wages and equal promotions and maternity benefits, all these laws were being implemented so to make a better working atmosphere possible for women in media, in publishing, in all other corporate sector, in all other sectors, women were actually finding jobs, and there was this superwoman figure, the working mother who actually manages everything all together. This image was gaining popularity, and Margaret Thatcher was becoming a symbol of female strength or female strength of character and decision making. So all these political changes and all these notions of new womanhood or the new progressive woman were coming into question. It is the same image that Caryl Churchill actually puts into question, or Caryl Churchill opens up for discussion. As we discussed, it's actually an open-ended play where many things are left to the discretion of the reader or the viewer of the play. Caryl Churchill is probably one of the few women playwrights who actually made it into the canon of playwrights in the 20th century. So she's probably a milestone playwright, we can say. So when we discuss Caryl Churchill's works, we cannot discuss it without discussing the existing prevailing cultural atmosphere, which I discussed about. We see that even very small norms and rules that come into practice actually influence the way in which women folk perceive life, women folk understand their own role in the society, and women folk understand their possibilities of progress. So all these come into question. We understand that how literary texts are actually deeply interconnected with the social circumstances from which they are born. Even a decision made by the government might actually determine the character of determine the nature of a character in a play. So Carol Churchill herself tells us in many interviews that how she had been traveling through America and she had been witnessing many career changes that women folk were choosing, and how they were managing a lot of things altogether. So all these things. So also this class conflict. Now the play is often also termed as a socialist play. So socialist plays always side with the struggling classes or the working classes rather than the corporates or the bourgeoisie, as we call them. So it's also called a socialist play because by the end of the play we do have a feeling that Carol Churchill is actually speaking for the people who could not actually find their place in this ladder of progress, who actually were left, as you remember 1984, where when the corrupt system is consuming the whole of the society, people like Boxer, the animal like Boxer, they're working hard so that they make a living, and they think that it's their responsibility that their life is this way, not the problem of the system. They keep on working hard. So Carol Churchill poses this question. So what about the people who are not as good or as competent as the people like Marlene? So where do their position come in the society, or what do they do in such a scenario? All these questions come into our minds when we go through. So we have been discussing various characters, also how Churchill actually is juxtaposing many historical periods and the roles of women during those historical periods through bringing together many female characters from different phases of history and making a conversation possible, and an anachronic conversation possible with these characters. So the changes in gender roles, the changes in female problems, and the solutions that women folk found to those problems come in contrast with the 20th century problems of women and 20th century cultural atmosphere and roles of women. So this is probably a dynamic play, we can say. It's a dynamic play which actually moves through ages and moves through political atmospheres, moves through stereotypes and a lot more. And also the language of the play, if we look at it, and the structure of the play, it's designed in a way, the language itself actually, there are subtle differences in the way in which different characters speak, so which actually demarcate the class of that speaker and the level of confidence and the level of self-worth of that speaker. And also then if we look at the structure of the play, firstly that party scene where all these women folk come together, and then these are actually spaces, the woman in the open space, in the open public space, and then the scenario of Joyce and Angie, the woman in a closed domestic space, so which are the spaces that women can occupy, and then Marlene and other women folk in an office space. So these spaces that women can occupy again are political questions. And then when we come to other questions like another very significant point is that there are no active male characters in the play. It's an all-woman cast play. So again, most of the time in other traditional plays, the role of women are mostly dependent on other male characters, and the choices in their lives and the direction of their lives are actually directed by other male characters. But in this play, there is a certain kind of beautiful kind of independence that can be seen in the lives of women folk, and it being all the men folk are kept out of focus here. Again, it is a very different strategy of representation. So despite Carol Churchill's claims to Carol Churchill's denial that it's a feminist play, there are many elements which can actually be called as part of feminism. And also again, there are certain subtle aspects of feminism which again Carol Churchill questions. So this is a socialist play in a sense, it's a feminist play in some senses. It also undermines feminism, the understanding of feminism at that point in some ways. So altogether it's a wonderful work. It's a wonderful work that everybody in the 20th century must go through, so that they do get an understanding of the gender roles and the evolution of gender roles in our society. So I hope that you've all watched the play, and of course, yesterday Hariharan sir's class, in the last class, Hariharan sir's discussion. I hope you must have gone through all that. So thank you for bearing with me throughout throughout the discussions of this play. I hope that you like the play and you connect with it and understand the social significance of it. So thank you.